All right, in this section of World War II visuals, we want to highlight some of the famous kind of battlefield commanders, the generals that are going to be leading these particular forces. Now, we already saw Admiral Yamamoto when we took a look at Pearl Harbor. I want to go to another one of the Axis leaders here with Erwin Rommel. Erwin Rommel was a field marshal for the Germans, which is a really high rank in the German military. He was a tank guy. You think I'm kidding? He actually wrote the very first, most famous book of the time on tank tactics. So that's how good he was. He's going to do a lot of early fighting in Africa, earning him the nickname the Desert Fox. And so that is, he's going to get a great deal of fame there. He's eventually brought back to mainland Europe, and he's put in charge of the defense of the D-Day beaches. So he's the guy that's going to build up those defenses. The Germans had some fantastic tanks called Panzers that were being used a lot in World War II. He is eventually implicated in a plot to overthrow Hitler, but because of his reputation, he's allowed to commit suicide rather than have to go through kind of the media circus of a trial. But a lot of people consider him to be the best German leader, military leader of World War II. We talked about General Patton as well. We saw him in our Africa notes. Patton was an American tank guy. He had served in World War I, but was a general in World War II. We talked about just how effective he was. His nickname was Old Blood and Guts. They took the quote from a famous speech that he gave where he said he was going to cut out the living guts of his enemies and use them to grease the wheels of his tanks. Patton's going to lead in Africa, Italy, and then eventually lead the charge for the United States after D-Day towards Berlin. He's a very good commander, very hard to work for. He didn't bother to ask a lot of permission. He said a lot of things that got him in trouble at different times, but by most accounts, he's the only American general that the Germans feared. They wanted to know where he was all the time just because of the aggressiveness he brought to the battlefield. Different incidents during World War II will cost him stars. He's demoted and promoted a couple of different times. They'll also cost him the opportunity to take part in things like the D-Day invasion. Eventually, he dies after the war's over with, but still in Europe in a car accident that is one of those things that conspiracy theorists have always said was kind of shady. Bill O'Reilly wrote a book called Killing Patton, where he explores some of the different issues that are different mysteries surrounding the death of General Patton. Last guy here to highlight is kind of a diva in the same way that General Patton was a diva in Europe. This is Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur was the leader of the whole army in the Pacific. He'd actually been in the Philippines when the Japanese attack, and he's put in charge of the army in that particular theater. If you remember back to that video, we said he famously said as he was leaving the Philippines, "I shall return." And he eventually does. The picture on the right is of him returning. Like I said, he was a guy that cultivated his image as well. You can see the aviator sunglasses, the slouch hat, the corncob pipe that you thought went out with Frosty the Snowman, but that Douglas MacArthur is going to bring back into vogue. He will eventually be put in charge of the rebuilding of Japan at the end of World War II, before he gets in a little bit of trouble leading the Korean War. So this guy's going to show up several other times as we're looking at some of these different things.